Our last mom is also from Pennsylvania. Angelina Banks is a mother to a blended family of 4. Yes. And we are excited to hear from this mama bear.
Yes, I am a mama bear. So yes, I am probably about 5 minutes from my home right now. But being a mother to a blended family is no easy task. It's a blessing, but it is not at all easy. Having a hand to help guide and shape the core traits, values, and defining characteristics of a child can seem daunting at times. But fostering a love of God, country, and family has always been at the forefront of my home. In 2017, when our oldest were in high school, we encountered something that we can all identify with. That typical teenage angst, hormonal moodiness, closed doors, and one-word answers. Typical, right? Not so much. Little did we know, we were experiencing cracks in our familial foundation due to the opposing ideologies and values introduced from a source that we could have never come to expect, our local public schools. Even then, CRT, DEI, and SEL policies were already being woven into the everyday educational experiences for our students. The demonization of the nuclear family, the mockery of faith, daily attacks on the red, white, and blue, and even a complete disregard for the brave men and women who keep us all safe. So I started chatting with other parents in the playgrounds, in Facebook groups, at civic meetings, and we started finding out really concerning things. We had discovered that students had been asked to participate in privilege walks. They were being instructed to fill out intrusive surveys about their home lives, and then the teachers were telling them not to tell the parents about the surveys that they were filling out. There were so-called activists from outside of our township that were given access to our students to brainwash them into creating victimhood profiles and oppression indexes. There was also an abrupt departure from reading, writing, and arithmetic, and that learning time was replaced by educators essentially acting as unlicensed behavioral modification therapists. And don't get me started on the books in the libraries, the books in the classrooms, the various bathroom policies, and all of the other things that we've actually heard a little bit about tonight. Then the pandemic hit, and we all know what happened. Students and parents saw the power-hungry teachers' unions doing everything they could to avoid going back to school. The teachers' unions told everyone that school wasn't important because of virtual learning, parents saw firsthand the departure from traditional schooling and the pivot and emphasis on woke ideals. And when parents began to speak up, what happened? They weaponized the DOJ against us. Right. They tried to scare us into keeping our voices silent. Our schools are failing our children, and we as parents have to wake up to the hard fact that we were failing them too. We blindly trusted a system that should have been building successful and educated youth. And instead, it was a system that was effectively undermining everything that we had hoped to instill in our children. Schools need to drop the twisted theology and the emphasis on woke issues. They need to refocus and return to the classics. The sky is the limit on what progress we could achieve in closing the education gaps. Dr. Sherry Few, I recently read this. If you put your kids in public school, they have only a 35% chance at attaining reading and math at level. A recent Johns Hopkins study noted that even though the number of students in U.S. classrooms is actually going down and the birth rate of students is going down, the number of students in school is also going down because they're being homeschooled, because the pandemic wasn't the learning issue, it was the teachers. In public education, we reward mediocrity and we discourage excellence. We suffer at the hands of a weaponized DOJ that seeks to silence the parents and seeks to silence our voices. But for me, I refuse to accept that, okay? And as long as I'm here, I will fight for my children, I will fight for yours. And so I would thank you guys for giving me the opportunity to bring light to this.
Yes. Love that, Angelina. I tell you, do not mess with Mama Bear, any of these Mama Bears, any of the Mama Bears that are watching, because boy, they will defend their children. That is what we are called to do. Angelina?
I'm superstitious too, so Senator Vance.
Call me JD, please.
All right. Our children's schools are teaching them that they are victims based on race.
Sure.
Family values are being mocked, and our country is being constantly disrespected. How will a Trump-Vance administration address CRT, DEI, and SEL in the public schools and support parent advocates without fear of government reprisals?
Yes, ma'am. Another big and important question, and I obviously don't know the backgrounds of all of you entirely, at least, and I don't know the backgrounds of a lot of folks in the room, but, I'm 40 years old, and so I'm very much a child of the 90s. And my wife is 38, though she's probably going to get pissed off for saying that publicly. Can't take it back now. But, so her parents are legal immigrants from South India, okay? And she was born and raised in San Diego, but I think because we grew up in the 90s, and I'm not saying things were perfect, don't mistake me, but we grew up in a country where we were taught to think about people as people and not as whatever artificial, superficial skin color they had. And I think because both of us grew up with that attitude, we met, we fell in love, we started a family, and we never thought anything of it, right? I mean, there was never, the only funny and slightly awkward comment that anybody ever made is when my mom asked, what ethnicity Usha was, and I said she was Indian, she said, which tribe? I said, well, slightly off, Mom, slightly off. But she actually, my mom made this point to me, and I think it's, Mom is so smart. She's just one of the smartest people I've ever met. And she said, I get really mad at all these people talking about your biracial children and, whether they're white or whether they're Indian or what their background is. She's like, they're just our babies, right? And I want us to think about all of our kids, whatever the color of their skin, they're just our babies. They're American babies, and that is what matters. And so I think one thing that we have to do is do better as leaders. Talking about, yes, of course, we've got, differences, and yes, of course, there are things that happen in America's history that aren't perfect. I'm not saying we ignore that, but we talk about it as a way to getting to a point where we see each other as Americans first and foremost. That's the most important thing. That's what we have to get back to. And then we also have to be honest, and this goes back to one of the earlier questions, that a lot of this crap is not something that anybody, black, white, Latino, anything, would teach their kids. They're learning it from very radical curriculums that are being planted in our schools by money coming from American taxpayers. And so I think the first thing that we have to do is defund CRT and all of the radical curricula that's going into our schools. That's really important. But ma'am, I think the leadership part of this is really important too. For some reason, we got it into our heads that in a country as big and diverse and different as ours is, we needed to emphasize our differences. I actually think that what real leadership requires now is emphasizing our commonality as Americans. I think that we have a common destiny in this country, and if we forget that and we ignore it, it's going to rip our country apart. Let's not do that. Let's be Americans first. Thank you.
Thank you.